This is the first in a series of 4 presentations on the Illuminati conspiracy theory, its origin, and its alleged evidence. So conspiracy theories that reach above the level of systemic theories, that is, conspiracy theories that are greater than just single systems, are going to require a master force by which all of the theory is organized. If you have a grand unification, a unified conspiracy theory, there's got to be something in charge of it that's actually doing the conspiracizing. Each pushpin has to have a central connection, or else the theory just amounts to a list of weird events and, hey, isn't it strange that X? Right? That's basically what history is. At some point, the complexity of the theory is going to require this. You cannot have a design without a designer, and the secret society represents that designer. So in the order that we have for the size of the conspiracy theories, based on a political scientist named Barkun, and he places them based on scale, which is event conspiracies, systemic, super, and then I've added omni-conspiracies, in which case everything is involved in the conspiracy theory. Secret societies kick in at the super level necessarily. At the level of a super conspiracy, you have to have some sort of secret society that is controlling everything. When a person begins discussing about a mysterious they, the discussion is going to be a conspiracy theory, and it's going to generally be a super conspiracy theory. You can have them at the systemic level. For example, people want to say that they don't want us to get a cure for cancer, and usually they're theorizing about a conglomeration of, say, pharmaceutical companies. But it's not necessary for a conspiracy, for a super or systemic conspiracy theory to have a secret society be controlling it, right? They can just be alluding to a couple of different companies working together. Right. So this means also that a believer's worldview is such that changes in culture or society cannot happen on their own. Right? There must be some sort of guiding force behind it. And if it's not a spiritual being, i.e. the devil, then usually they posit this shadowy group as being responsible for it. And then they'll also usually tie that into a spiritual being, like the devil as well. There's a lot of overlap between Christian doomsday eschatology and Illuminati satanic conspiracy theories. So let's begin with the French Revolution, since that's pretty much where the Illuminati conspiracy theories first take hold. Okay, so the Revolution in France, more so than the American Revolution, becomes a focal point for 18th century conspiracy theorists. One primary reason is that the actual Illuminati, right, the historical group, was disbanded shortly before the Revolution. But also, because of the reforms the revolutionary government made after the monarchy was overthrown, tended to prove to certain people that something else had to be behind this. So let's give a little historical context. And if you're a historian or history major or somebody who's just a fan of the history of revolutionary France, I'm skipping over a bunch. Don't get frustrated. It's just something that needs to be done for brevity's sake. The French monarchy was financially bankrupt. After fighting the 7 Years' War and then funding the American Revolution, the monarchy instituted a series of regressive tax policies, which meant that if they upped regressive taxes is if the your tax bill increases by 1% this year, generally speaking, you just pay a higher tax this year. If it's regressive tax, it actually works backwards, so you would owe the 1% increase for the previous years as well. The Catholic Church as well still demanded its 10% from the population, but were in turn immune from any taxation. Right? They're a tax-free institution, but they're still not going to say, like, we know the government, the aristocracy raised your taxes. We're still going to need our money, though. Right? For a few years, there was a policy of deregulating the farming industry, and this led to bad harvests, which again the monarchy and the church were immune to from the effects of. So not only are the population being higher taxed, but they're also starving because of the bad food harvests. There was also a rising business class that had no authority because of the feudal system, but was responsible for a great deal of the economy. The way this complaint is that you had a merchant class that became all of a sudden very, very important to the French economy. So let's just stereotype France. It's all wine cellars, right? Uh, so I own a wine business, I own a winery in France during this time, and I'm doing a lot of business. Let's say I'm just trading Burgundy to Germany, Austria, Italy, trading all of my wine everywhere, and I'm getting a lot of money, and I'm paying my taxes. But my tax donations are actually responsible for the economy. All right, mine and my colleagues' tax donations. But because of the feudal system, because it's still an aristocratic system, I have no authority over how that money's spent. I just contribute to it, and that's it. So I'm very unhappy in this situation, as well as the regular peasant class at the time. Then there's another group, and this group would be the Enlightenment philosophers, right? These are the people that had basically formed the intellectual underpinnings of the American Revolution. And now they're looking over at France and saying, you know what, it's actually kind of worse in France. I mean, at least the colonies, although they had no parliamentary representation, there was a democratic system there. In France, there's nothing, and it's just such an open theocracy over there. So they're circulating pamphlets. Printing is cheap, it's easy, and their ideas are taken off. The population, tired of starving while the aristocratic and clerical classes ate well, inspired by these Enlightenment philosophers, begin the revolution on the 14th of July, 1789. They storm the Bastille, and the monarchy is overthrown with relative speed and is somewhat peaceful until the Reign of Terror begins later that year. Okay. And the revolutionary period officially ends when the crowning of Napoleon as the emperor occurs, which, leave it to the French. They'll overthrow a king to elect an emperor, which, again, I know I'm being super, super glib about. But the whole thing takes place. The whole thing takes place. It's very drastic. It's very shocking to the European old guard, right? Europe is mostly monarchs and aristocrats and feudal systems at this time, and this is a shock to them, especially with the guillotine of the whole thing. So after the overthrowing, after everything is happening, the old guard, the European old guard, starts looking at it, and they're like, "What in the hell is happening in Europe, or in France?" This revolution is promoted by weird intellectuals who are no longer just sitting in the palaces and drinking fancy wines and saying, we should help out the common people. They're actually on the streets helping the common people. And they're talking about these things like rights and equality, this whole idea that every person is born equal to everyone else. That's clearly not the case with all these dukes, earls, and kings walking around. I mean, the revolution literally cut the head off the old ways of governing and replaced it with this weird thing called representative democracy, which seems to be working over in the colonies, but that's in the colonies, those old colonies. That's not in Europe. It absolutely could not be that literacy and education taught the people that there was a better way to conduct a state. There had to have been a secret force at work, and that secret force they needed to give a name and a face to. The Illuminati conspiracy theory, in all its guises, reflects the centuries-old ideological war between the upholders of orthodoxy and those they condemn as heretics, writes Johnson in Architects of Fear. So any paradigm shift, whether political or cultural, is going to be blamed on some shadow secret society. The protectors of orthodoxy cannot fathom that there would be a large-scale rejection of what they hold dear. The secret societies represent the growing fear that their grip on social institutions is not only slipping, but being pushed away. In other words, they're not just falling under the water, somebody's holding their head under the water. And that's how they view it. It can't be that the aristocratic system was viewed as obsolete and inefficient and just frankly morally objectionable. It has to be that somebody was, making the people think that way. In the 18th century, there's not only a movement against the feudal system, but there's also a rise in occultism. And in Germany, even before that, in the 17th century, they're detailed an existence of a mystical group called the Rosicrucians, based on these three pamphlets that occurred. The Rosicrucians also means the Order of the Rosy Cross, which for me is hard to take seriously because it's got the word rosy in it. This group was allegedly a secret cabal of alchemists, natural philosophers, and mystics trying to usher in a peaceful Europe. They're very likely never to have existed in any sort of cohesive original form, but groups emulating the ideas in the three pamphlets began to spring up. Elements of their beliefs combine alchemy, Kabbalah, and Christian mysticism. And if you're unfamiliar with it, Kabbalah is just Jewish mysticism. It's got a whole bunch, it's got a lot of symbols and stuff, which is why conspiracy theorists love it. Today, it was just New Age hodgepodge. You go to the New Age or the unfortunately named philosophy sections in brick and mortar bookstores, and you'll find these types of books. It gained popularity in the culture and influenced the rights of the Freemasons. And the idea of a band of intellectuals meeting together and having discussions gave rise to the Invisible College, which later became the British Royal Society, whose most famous member is probably Isaac Newton, and he delivered the theory of gravity to the British Royal Society. So we're going to stop there, and we'll come back talking about the history of the actual Illuminati. And thank you for listening.